In the 19th century, Heinrich Hertz started experimenting with a system that would track objects by bouncing low-frequency waves off them. Numerous short-range versions of this system were developed in the early 20th century. The system was first proven in long ranges by a person named Watson Watt, who worked for the British Air Ministry. It went on to save his country in the Battle of Britain and influence communication everywhere. This system even affects us today, most notably through tracking planes in the sky. This system is called radio detection and ranging, or radar. Radar works by bouncing small pulses of radio waves off metal objects. Receivers receive the waves that were bounced back. The math works almost like magic, pinpointing where the object is. Radar's limitless uses created its significant role in military history. The collection of information by radar led to its vital role in communication during the Battle of Britain and its continued use in civilian and military life to this day. In 1939, Nazi forces invade Poland, initiating World War II. Soon, they swept across France and set their eyes on the United Kingdom, starting what would become the Battle of Britain. At the outbreak of the Battle of Britain, the Luftwaffe's frontline strength was far superior to that of the RAF's. RAF means Royal Air Force. This deficit in frontline forces was 2-1 in the Luftwaffe's favor, but Britain had finished installing a system called chain home, which was just a type of radar. The Luftwaffe estimated they would defeat the RAF in 4 weeks. They were very far off. Rather, the Battle of Britain lasted for 3.5 months. One of those days led to the largest aerial combat of the Battle of Britain, and would become known as the Battle of Britain Day. 1,500 planes were launched throughout the day, and the British fighters, rather poetically, shot down the German forces in about a 2-1 ratio. The question is, how does a force with such a large numbers advantage lose? The answer to that lies in radar. Chain home, British radar, would detect Luftwaffe planes and give gathered information to a filter room, which would sort the information and direct it to where it needed to go. This let the British better manage their manpower, since radar filled in their prior need for air patrols. The Germans knew of radar's existence, and had even pioneered early radar technology. They just didn't use it in coordination with other systems, as the British did. One of the main reasons the Luftwaffe lost the Battle of Britain is because, with all their resources, they could not gather nor communicate information to match the British radar. Gwen Reading wrote a book detailing her time as a radar operator, titled Radar Days, published under the name Gwen Arnold. She was a radar operator for the WAAF, the Women's Auxiliary Air Force. The WAAF supported the RAF by doing jobs like cooking, cleaning, or operating radar. In her book, she also mentions how the radar system could track many aircraft at once. Quote, "The greatest number of aircraft I ever saw on my screen at one time was 1,950 plus. This system could map 1,950 individual data points that moved and changed without any trouble in 1943, 31 years before the first personal computer would become available. Later, when the Air Ministry finally told the public about the radar crews, they released this statement to the newspapers. Quote, "They, the radar operators, tracked hostile and friendly aircraft, flying bombs and rockets, German E-boats and Allied merchant vessels, and have guided British and Allied fighter pilots onto enemy aircraft. Trained to use and service some of the most delicate and complicated instruments ever invented, they have carried out their duties with enthusiasm, often under uncomfortable conditions and sometimes under enemy fire." Before radar, the British were experimenting with a system that detected sounds. These would take incoming sound waves and amplify them, letting them listen for planes. They became known as sound mirrors and are bigger versions of dishes you can see at science museums. The problem with this system was the advancement of sound mirrors wasn't equal to the growth in planes, leaving the mirrors in the dust. More importantly, they could be easily disrupted. There was rumor that the sound mirrors could be interfered with by a milk truck, and there's proof that rush hour traffic would render them useless. Radar was far more consistent and accurate, and therefore replaced them. Ultimately, the invention that won the Battle of Britain was radar. It was reliable compared to the spotters, who had to have a line of sight to the planes. It was accurate because it used the chain home and the chain home low system to detect altitude and distance. It was consistent, unlike the mirrors that could be disrupted by loud traffic. It is because of this that we still use radar today. After the Battle of Britain, the first nuclear weapon was dropped by a heavy bomber on August 6, 1945, on a town called Hiroshima. As time went on, war became deadlier, airplanes became faster, and radar became more prominent. Craig Picken, in an interview with the magazine The Drive, talks about his time on the E-2C Hawkeye, a plane with a giant radar dish mounted on top of the plane. The E-2C is in the fight to, as Craig puts it, quarterback the other planes. The quarterbacking is battlefield management. To do this, the plane uses, quote, a long-range AN/APS 139/145 radar, capable of spotting and tracking thousands of contacts from hundreds of miles away. It communicates with other aircraft by sharing its radar and information. Quote, that same picture can also be transmitted directly into the cockpit of fighter and attack aircraft. Coordinated air intercepts can be done with literally no verbal communications. Radar has grown into one of the deadliest tools and is now used to directly give information. The Hawkeye, although not directly in action, is one of the most vital planes. Its intelligence gathering and communication role lead to this. Quote, everyone at some point was going to ask for our help. Like the Hawkeye or chain home, radar gives raw data for the communication systems to interpret. Any system that filters data is formed around the data received. For example, the weather system is built to show the general public easy-to-interpret data. The computers that change the weather data it receives, raw data, into easily understandable data, a shaded map. The same is with radar. Radar posts would relay the radar information to the filter room. From there, the filter room can scramble the closest pilots and give them the information necessary. These systems rely on each other to communicate information efficiently and accurately. Soon, the E-2C Hawkeye was replaced by a more advanced version, the E-2D. Like all technology, radar will have to improve somehow. One such potential improvement is MIMO radar. MIMO radar increases the raw data it can produce by combining information from multiple inputs and multiple outputs. MIMO radar gets its name from the multiple inputs and multiple outputs it handles. Another is RadarComm, which integrates communication systems with radar, which would give radar a much more active role in communication. Radar might seem like some fancy foreign technology, but it is quite commonplace. Radar is used in stud detectors, helping in home improvement. That infuriating beep coming from car backup systems is another everyday use of radar. Radar has limitless applications, and its future is endless.